And hello, everyone. Hello, Nena.
Hello.
Up. Really happy to be with you here today. It will be really great because last week we had Guillaume from GitHub and we spoke about the usage of the skills of the instruction for the AI agent to be sure upfront that the generated code will follow at least what we think is good quality code. But now we are speaking with you to speak about once this code has been generated, how we can be sure that it can be merged to production and how we can avoid this bottleneck of the code review when you work with a lot of AI within the development. So you end up with more pull requests to validate, etc. So it can be a bottleneck. So what is your experience about this, the usage of AI? Can you see a lot of discussion around this bottleneck in the development team you are working with?
Yeah, so whenever I get a chance to speak with engineers, which even happens a lot at conferences, just listening to different pain points right now with this AI code generation surge and um, being introduced to tools to actually use these tools to build and ship software faster. Uh, it's very clear to me that from the engineering managers' perspective and other leaders, that there is a bottleneck when it comes to how to properly verify and review all of the code that is now being generated at a much higher rate than when we were manually writing code. So if the speed is increasing drastically for code generation, how are we going to manually review all of this to keep up all of the productivity gains that came from earlier in the development workflow? So this is a huge topic of concern right now.
Yeah, totally. So we heard a lot about context engineering, now harness engineering, so how we can harness the agents to be sure that the generated code follow our standard and every good practices we have within the team. So we speak about test, we speak about linter, we speak about instruction scale. But yeah, the code review part is still really human led. So a lot of developers are working on this code review part. I don't think it should be totally avoided. So it's
Right.
still great maybe to have human in the loop. You will explain also your point of view on this topic. But yeah, it's really great to avoid creating more bottleneck in some other part of the SDLC.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely a lot we want to there's a lot we get promised about what AI can do for engineering, but it's about really, finding the right practices and the right tools to actually realize some of those gains. And yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot more that we'll share about, the quality aspect of that and how to really maintain that high quality all the way through the development workflow.
Yeah, great. So we will start. We have a lot of people here, so feel free to ask questions directly in the chat section. So we will take the question as it goes. The idea is mainly to have a discussion and to see how Qodo is working and what you see mainly in your clients and in every countries you are working on. So yeah, to start, thank you again to be here, Nina. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes. So my name is Nnenna Ndukwe, and I am a developer relations lead at Qodo. And Qodo is, and I'm also based in Boston, Massachusetts, US. Qodo is an AI code review and code quality platform. So really all about in this age where we know that more AI code is going to be generated, we have a tool where you can actually have AI kick off multiple code review agents against your code in the pull request. When you have a pull request, if you're using GitHub or Bitbucket or whichever tool you use, just to make sure that we can uncover any type of issues or findings in the code, just like an engineer would do if they were manually reviewing code. And that really can help with surfacing some important insights and issues that can be then resolved to push your code forward and maintain those standards.
Great. Sounds very promising. And yeah, mainly what I say a lot of the time with the team is that if we want to gain productivity with AI, real productivity, we need to gain in confidence with the generated code. So we need to act as the AI agent working with us are in the same level of quality that other developers within the team. So we can be sure that if the code has been generated with AI, we won't spend 3 or 4 or 5 the time to review this code because it will have a lot of issues, etc. But mainly, I saw the report from DX today, the report from Q1 2026, really interesting, by the way. So he mentioned that developer using AI release 4 times more pull requests per week. So we have a mean of 4 pull requests per developer per week if you are heavily using AI every day. But also with the usage of AI, more than 50% more bugs pushed to production. So
Mm.
2% more in a change failure rate indicator. So yeah, that's still not as good as the quality, but also we release more frequently and we pushed a lot of generated code. So that's a real issue. We increase the productivity, but we still don't act enough on the quality. And at the end of the report, they mentioned that in 2026, the teams should focus on the quality, on the best practices, and how to ensure the generated code. So it's really good for you at Qodo.
Yeah, absolutely. The timing is definitely great, and there's so much more to solve in the space too, which I think is exciting. Like the first thought is, well, yeah, it would be great if AI we have AI like coding harnesses that are optimized for generating code as quickly as possible, right? But then we need an AI system that's optimized to be adversarial, that's optimized to actually figure out where are the cracks in this code. That's a slightly different, a different enough architectural design and types of agents that are running to make sure that the quality won't your quality the quality of your code won't be sacrificed. So there is a huge need there to build that. But that's like the first part. It's like the next part is, well, we also write code a certain way, or we have a certain way with certain standards that we want to abide by that are specific to my team or the culture of this engineering organization. So how do you embed that as well into the process? So it's really it's maturing, but it's an exciting space.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to see the product in action and see some use cases. So yeah, if you can go ahead and share your screen, maybe share some insight about Qodo,
Yeah, let
because
me.
I think it changed a lot since maybe 1 or 2 years. There's been
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think I could start with a quick little presentation, but it'll probably be
yeah,
only a couple slides, or I could dive into what things actually look like in action.
it's really up to you. If you think it's interesting to have some slide for the context, it's still
Yeah,
good. And then
I
yeah.
will see which one I can do.
And for the people in the room, feel free to ask question and directly in the chat. It's really great to have you here, Nnenna, because you have a lot of experience with team working on the code review. So it's still great to hear your thought about what is great, what is a good idea, what is a bad idea.
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to move over some things on my machine so it's a bit easier. And and now I will try to share again. Okay, so let me know if you can see this, my slide.
Yeah, that's working for me.
Okay, great. So this is just a super short, to the point idea to help you understand where we're coming from with Qodo, with this AI code review and code quality concept. Um, and I'm sure you all have heard, all of these discussions about guided code generation and making sure, like, how can we improve or steer AI coding agents to generate code in the way that would ensure quality, right? And then beyond that, it's like, well, how can we continue to enforce that code quality past the code generation phase and into code review? So if you really think about it, it's about following these quality checks for AI through where a developer is going. And where do developers go once they're done, when they plan for the work that they want to do, that we want to do? And then we go into the implementation and the testing. And then we need to have that properly reviewed, at least by another developer. And so that's where we're taking our AI systems, is exactly where developers would work for that code review phase. And what I have here in this slide is that Packmind really helps with making the standards explicit and usable by AI agents. And then the AI generated code still needs to be reviewed before it ships, like he mentioned. And so those same standards that have already done the work to codify that, we want to carry that into code review and into the pull request experience. And so Qodo applies that playbook at review time. If you take the rules and the standards that you've already created, and then you also pair that with the code base, with context engineering for the code base, so that Qodo, your AI code review tool, has a lot of the knowledge that it takes to review critically with an senior engineer's mindset, as if someone that tool has actually been an engineer working there as a part of your team. It's Qodo's will review your PR using that code base context, and then also using the rules and that your team has set. That gets added into the criteria for the agents to measure the code against. And then when Qodo finds issues, that will show whether or not that code has diverged from expectations, or if it's aligned and in good standing and in a good position to, of course, add in that human review. But consider this to be a great opportunity for like AI taking the first pass on some of that code. And in general, you can look at Qodo. This is just a very like helpful slide to understand like the landscape of the code review platform for the software development lifecycle. We're across different interfaces in the IDE and Git, the CLI, and then we have our code quality agents. That's what's happening. These are the agents underneath the code review hood of bugs and issue findings, checking for your team standards and compliance, having that deep understanding of your actual code base, so it's not just focused on the few or a few hundred lines of code that are changed, but it's thinking about the context of everything else and all the different moving parts in the architecture in your code base. So it's a much more sharp and refined review experience. And then the continuous learning aspect there, that's important too, because as your code evolves, so will the way that your AI needs to engage with you to provide the best feedback for how to improve and maintain code quality. So that's just a high level of the of what Qodo is all about. And let's see.
Uh,
Mhm.
can I ask you a question? Because I think this slide answered the question I had.
Uh-huh.
It was a really naive question about why don't we do this code review with AI directly within our IDE? So we use Cloud Code, we use GitHub Copilot, and as we code, we integrate all those rules, etc. But as I understand it, you go really further than just checking the change lines, etc. So it will take some time, some effort, etc. So it will be really a really bad experience for a developer to wait for all of those review before committing the code. Is that right?
So you're saying when you're coding or when you want a review done locally before making a pull request, you're asking about the time that it would take to
Yeah.
gather all of that context.
Yeah, exactly. All of those result from Qodo. So you are doing this directly in the CI once the code is pushed. But if we wanted to do it locally before we push the code, maybe it would take too much time. So that's the kind of thing you prefer to do directly in the pull request section.
Yeah, I think what's happening under the hood. This is something that the research and development team have worked really hard on. This is that's an architectural problem, when it comes to context engineering that we worked on solving to really only have to or essentially built like this context engine that allows us to dynamically pull in the most relevant pieces of context so as to not slow down the actual review process for when you are reviewing locally and when you are reviewing in GitHub too, because so in GitHub or in your IDE, it could take a couple minutes. I would say in GitHub takes about like 5 minutes, and then you get that full breakdown.
Okay, okay, great.
And now I'd like to see if I can move on to this. Can you see my view now in GitHub?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Okay, great. So I pulled up a pull request that for some reason, it's still open, which is great for us because we can just take a look at this. This is in like an AI red teaming OSS project that I worked on some time ago. And so this would be a typical pull request that I've made. And I've made some changes here. And I'm going to show you exactly what Qodo looks like right here in GitHub. So we've got the Qodo code review bot that as soon as I open a PR, Qodo automatically kicks off. And so you'll see this in real time, just generating the review summary. What's helpful here is that as this, once this is immediately generated, you have an idea of what this pull request is even about. And it's organized in a way that makes this easy to understand. Qodo picks up that this is an enhancement type of pull request, which is important and different than other types of code changes that you would make. It also automatically generates a description of what's occurring in this code change and generates a diagram here. And then this diagram shows the changes of the actual code and the processes and what it has become as a result. And I think I might be able to increase the size of this, but this just gives you an idea of, I didn't have to do any of this. This is everything that Qodo automatically generates for you. And for some people, having that visual diagram, I know for me, it's super helpful to see how that change impacts the entire process across the file changes and the functions.
So it's not only about finding bugs or quality issues, but also getting this kind of description of what changed within this PR and also the comprehension of the implementation and how those components are linked together, etc. So a human here can see if there is some mistakes in the architecture or something like that.
Yeah, it's great. It's helpful for I think if for so many reasons. What you mentioned right there, you could, especially if you have a context of what needed to happen in this for this code review, for this code change, you would get an idea of where something might have gone wrong already just by looking at maybe the description and looking deeper at the diagram. And it's also helpful on the other side for developers who don't have that context and need to maybe learn from what's actually going on with this code change and think about maybe some junior developers or people who get a lot of benefit from being educated in this very clear, succinct way of the description and an architectural diagram. So I think it can really be good practice from one side, and then also be great for maybe a more senior person who can see if there are issues.
Yeah, totally.
And when I scroll down here, this is where all of the main action happens. And just for you all who are listening, I religiously use Qodo on all of my PRs because of the types of bugs that it has uncovered that I would have never expected. And so I do rely on getting this kind of information. The code review is the way that it's presented is that you get a list of the bugs that are there, if there are any. If you're lucky and really special, you might not have any. And then rule violations. For those who have been, following Packmind and the way in which the engineering playbook is codified, think about how that is such powerful context to have to be brought in and leveraged by Qodo. Because when there are issues in the code that would violate some of these rules or standards and expectations, it would show up right here, and it would show up in the list, and there would be an entire explanation. So I'll go on to the next one: requirements gaps. Do you use Jira? Do you use Linear? What ticketing system do you use? That's an additional source of context that can be brought in and processed and analyzed by Qodo, and Qodo will measure that against the code. And of course, the specification deviations. As you can see in this list, I've got two sections that were generated: action required and review recommended. This is to give you an idea of the different levels of severity of code changes, of code issues, findings. Not every issue is created equally, right? And so it is very helpful to know which ones, like in the action required, should probably be looked at and fixed before you merge the code, right? Have you, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on that, about, the different severity levels of issues that can be encountered with code, and how, like, there is, it is helpful. I think in my case, I would like to hear your thoughts on that, about how knowing what's more important than the other to address, and what is worthy of blocking a merge.
Yeah, totally. So, like you mentioned here, everything about security should be handled. Everything about
Mm,
accessibility, if you have some rules, important rules about accessibility, for example, should be handled in this way. And what is great with this kind of level of severity is that some people said, okay, I use GitHub Copilot for code review or some other tool for code review, like CodeRabbit, etc. And they generate a lot of noises. And I spend too much time using those tools with a lot of different commands just to find maybe one bug in 10 or 50 PRs. And
mm,
I think that this kind of noise should be here only because you don't have this level of severity. If you really take a look at the important thing like this one, you won't have too many things to review, and you can be sure that, okay, if this one is not really important, I will check mainly the more important ones and not the other ones about the code quality or something like that.
mhm.
Or if you have the time, you can review all of them, etc. So yeah, but I would say the things about security, about architecture, about performance, it really depends on the context. If you are working on a mobile system or a mobile system, you will really need to be sure that the performance are great. And if you are working on a banking system, you really want to be sure that the security is great, for example. So yeah, it will be great for the team, depending on their context, to focus on some different things.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's probably a great thing to communicate when using a tool like this, depending on the types of issues that come up. what you believe is worth addressing, because this is AI's perspective. And of course, what's great about this is you can configure and fine tune that, how Qodo works on the back end. If you want to have or prioritize or certain types of issues over others, or present the maximum amount of issues and still want to just be able to move forward without addressing all of them. So I think that that's the variation there can be that you can customize can be helpful. So yeah, we've got an issue here that is considered important enough to address, and that is a security bug issue that you were just describing. And there's a description to follow that to give you context about exactly how this issue, or how it can actually become an issue. Leaking secrets contained in exception messages to clients. That sounds very clear. Have an idea. Not only do I have an idea of how that can be a problem, I see exactly where in the lines of code where that is a problem. And it presents it here, but you can also click on the link to see the lines of code where that issue occurs. That's helpful. But then there's an evidence section. And what's awesome about the evidence section that is, I think it goes beyond just, I know that there's these lines of code that have problems. It's also where you'll find agent.md pulled in. It's also where you'll find those coding standards that get pulled in as evidence for how this code is not following the protocols that you all have established, right? And so that's how I think about it when I think about tools like Packmind. And when I think about a tool like Qodo, it's like you have Packmind where those standards are living, and then you have Qodo where it's like, and here's exactly which of those standards that you have stored are not being met in this code change.
Yeah, and what is important also to mention is that you can have all the standards that you want, all the skills that you want. The AI is still non-deterministic,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on the context window filling, depending on the agent you will be using, etc., you can have some issue within your code, and you can also still write code by your hand
Yes.
without the use of AI. So it's still great to have this second phase of review with AI to be sure that all the things that was needed within the code has been followed, so you can go deeper in those sections and see evidences. So I think that's great to have this kind of security part in over the skills and the instruction you can have at the start.
Yeah, and it's great having this context of which rules or agent .md file is relevant to actually take a deeper look at to see where this issue even occurred. And not only do you want to have all of that evidence and know what the issue is, that's great, but like what do I do about it now? And there's many ways that you can go about that. But one thing that was important at Qodo that we found to be extremely valuable for customers is giving them the ability to copy and paste the exact agent prompt to give to a coding agent to fix. We already know developers where you might be using Claude Code a lot. You might be using, I don't know, GitHub Copilot CLI. There's so many different coding agents and tools. Whichever one you are already using, you've got that whole thing, that whole environment set up. You can copy and paste this and take it right back to that same session or that same agent and address the issue that has the description of the issue, the proper context, the fix focus areas, the exact files and lines of code where this is relevant, and the suggested fix in great detail, right? Because as you said, non-deterministic, we need to make sure these agents have all of the context and the proper guidance that it needs to fix this the right way so that we can move on to the next stage and improve the code.
Do you know if you can do it from GitHub directly because you can launch some GitHub agent, for example, and give them some prompt to fix thing? Have you
Uh,
seen this use case?
I have not seen, I haven't seen people use GitHub to actually uh, solve it. But, it just depends on wherever it is that you already run agents to solve problems, right? And so that's one of the things that we noticed is that if you're in the IDE and you're using a chat agent there, and that's where you're generating code, that's where you're also looking and reviewing your code, then maybe you want to come back to that same place to make sure you're also fixing that code there and pushing it back up to the branch. So it really just depends on where you work. But the goal is to meet you where you already do work when you're coding.
Yeah. And we have a question from Bastien. Up, I put it right there. So he's saying that um, Qodo allowed the PR author to improve their PR before sending it to a human reviewer. But at the end, we still have a human reviewing what Qodo generated.
Mhm.
Saying, what are we trying to improve then? Are we trying to reduce the number of comments coming from humans? So use AI to find the same thing as human? Or and remove the number of back and forth that we can have. But I think that with your presentation, it's pretty clear that it's really good for different things to look at problems and issues that humans maybe wouldn't have found. So the one about security or about complex architecture, etc. Looking for things about the specification. So a mismatch between the specification in Jira or in your ticket and
Right.
the implementation, etc. So a lot of different things, in fact.
Yeah, I think there's different ways to benefit and gain from this. And I think that everyone and every team and their needs will be different. But, at the end of the day, the human in the loop, I think, is extremely important. And so if the right issues with the right context can be surfaced and AI does that part, now, I think that's a form of saving time. That's a form of saving developer hours. And then you get to decide how much further you want to dig into certain issues. Um, on the note of finding the same issues that a human would, well, first of all, I would hope that AI is good enough to find the same issues that a human, a professional developer would. You know, I would think in this industry it would be a, a really good standard to have to actually meet the level of expertise as like senior developers, and then go beyond that, which would be to hopefully address or surface issues that maybe that same developer wouldn't have thought of. But that is a standard, and that's something that is tested with benchmarks, actually, like code review benchmarks, to see what are code review tools surfacing the right like issue? Are they surfacing issues and able to detect it? Um, and are they or is and are there false positives? Like those are the types of metrics that
Yeah,
are a part of the benchmarks to ensure that these algorithms and the system underneath the hood is more optimal and provides a better experience for developers so that they can actually trust what AI is showing you.
yeah, great. Great. So yes,
Um,
that's pretty complementary, but the idea is really to gain time and to find also some bugs that people should have missed because they can be really tricky or really hard to find for someone who is reviewing the code, but just the code change and not the whole application, also something like that.
exactly. And I have another example of a pull request here that I have merged in maybe a few weeks ago, I believe. And this is an MCP server and CLI tool that I've been building. This is what I showed you was the before of Qodo first
Mm.
finding issues. And this is what it looks like after when you have fixed the issues and made updates to your branch. What's really nice to see is that straight across the board, we have zeros now, right? So Qodo has updated itself once you've updated your branch with the fixes to the code, and the issues that you have had are now crossed out. And this is even more of an example of what Arthur, that you were mentioning. There could be correctness
Mhm.
concerns, reliability. I've seen performance related bugs pop up. There's a combination of different ones, but we need to get as many of the most high value ones as we can. And in this case, that's what we did, or that's what Qodo did. And I hope here, or I know I only have a plan that's listed here, but what's really helpful about speeding up the process, I would say, is when you have a list of issue findings here, we're also leveraging agent skills. So in the case that you want to automatically have your coding agent parse through all of the findings and then fix it, and then push that work back up to the PR to cross these items off the list, you can run Qodo's skill, which is called the Qodo like PR resolver. Run
Okay.
that in your local coding terminal, or IDE, and that kicks off automatically and gets that code in a better position. So you can go more in depth and review each issue, or if you want to do it quickly, you also have that option.
In fact, that's really interesting. It should have been my second question about we use AI to generate code, then we push the code, then we use AI to review the code and make some findings about a lot of different things.
Hmm.
So now we can still use AI to fix those findings and issues, and then it will be pushed. So the AI would say, okay, now I think the code is great and should be mergeable.
Yes.
And now that's the time for human. Is that it?
Yeah. Oh no, keep going. What were you saying?
So yeah, that's the time, in fact, at the end where the AI has done his job of writing the code, finding the mistakes, fixing the mistakes, and then a human can review which what has been the mistakes in the first place, how they have been resolved, and then validate the new version of the code. Maybe so we we put out the human from the loop for
Hmm.
a whole part of the SDLC, but at the end we still have a human validating the code going to production. But in this case, we will gain a lot of time because it will be done automatically with the Qodo skills that you mentioned.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking to see if I have an example of the Qodo skills that I have run against my pull request. Here we
So
go.
you run it, yeah, you run it directly from your IDE. Is that it?
I
Yeah.
run it in, yeah, I actually run it in Codex in my Codex app. So it's the
Okay.
GUI. I don't know if I have that pulled up, but in your IDE from your CLI, if you're using like one of the GUI apps like Codex app, you run Qodo PR resolver, which is
Mm.
actually, that's literally the command right here. Point it to that PR number, and it kicks off going through iterating over each issue to fix it. Oh, and there's that performance one I wanted to see. It was like, there's got to be proof of a performance bug. There was a performance bug about indexing um, chunks of worth an AI system I'm building. And the Qodo fix summary, I did not write any of this. Um,
Okay.
Codex did, as a result of fixing the bugs that Qodo surfaced and following the agent prompts and the guided solution that Qodo provided. Then Codex was able to fix the issues and push a fixed summary. So that is all a part of the Qodo PR resolver skill that happens. None of that is manual work, which I think is just makes the process, that workflow, a lot easier. Giving an entire fix summary of what was fixed, and the verification, the tests that were run to prove that it was fixed. And that being documented in GitHub is definitely helpful to have that tracked somewhere, right? Not just going off into some silo and then proving that the code works now. You can always come back to this comment and see what was addressed and see what was crossed off of the list and what wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's
that
great.
So that was at a high level what I wanted to show. This is how not only am I using Qodo like this is how all of our customers are relying on this as a great like first pass for developers to know what kind of issues could exist, or if my code is in good condition to move this along with all of the proper context that would be useful for improving this experience.
Yeah. And we have a question from Jonas. And maybe you already have this question from your customer. He's saying that right now we are using, for example, Qodo and the AI code review at the PR stage, right, rather than earlier in the SDLC. So that's what we discussed at first when saying you are in your IDE, you are coding, and maybe you can have those feedbacks, those findings, use the skill from Qodo, automatically fixing this, etc. So did you have already this kind of feedback from client, and why right now we don't shift those things left and we still push it in the PR? Maybe that's some technical issue, maybe that's some habit by the developers team, etc.
hmm so how do you justify AI code review at the PR stage than earlier? Earlier is the future, and earlier in the software development lifecycle is definitely what we care about. And so I wouldn't say that there are any blockers. I would say that this, I would say that it is important as a baseline to have the where code review has traditionally happened and continues to happen for engineers. It's important to have that part sorted out in GitHub,
Mm.
Bitbucket, or whatever Git provider that you use. And then to talk about shift left. Now, that's extremely important to us. And that's why we have our local code review workflows or commands that you can run in your IDE or in VS Code. And so that allows you to review committed changes and uncommitted changes and fix things earlier in the process. We also have an agent skill for calling and pulling down all the rules that you have as coding standards that your team shares. If you can pull those rules down and your agent has that context and before you even start coding, now that is also an example of shift left to improve the quality during code generation, and then a local code review. You run that command and that kicks off. And then the last touch point, the checkpoint, can be the in at the PR stage.
Yeah. So it's already possible, in fact, with those calls and maybe the CLI, the skill with Qodo. So yeah.
Yes. And I can probably share the links to the skills if that would be helpful for folks.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because, like you mentioned, traditionally we have this kind of review part during the PR review, and with AI changing everything right now, a lot of things are moving, but it's still great to have this baseline where during the code review process you have all those findings, the fix, etc. And then once it's working, sure, you can shift it left and try to do it earlier in the process.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Yeah, and you want consistency, right, over what shifting left from the beginning and then moving through. You want those same standards that have already been set, or those same types of checks that you want, code quality checks for performance. You want all of that to be consistent coming from one source, and then you can apply it to as many phases in as early in the life cycle as possible. And I think it really helps agents to keep them in check, at least for now with the with what agents generate. And sometimes it looks good, and other times it's like, where did you get that piece of code from? Because it could not have been from me.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, what
shared.
is interesting is that, yeah, thank you for the skills that you shared. And yeah, that's pretty complementary from a lot of different things. So tomorrow we will have another webinar with Dora from Arola, and we will discuss about mutation testing, property-based testing, and how to make harness engineering, but with, I will say, old tools like TDD, mutation testing, etc., that now are really important also to gain confidence with the generated code by AI. So if you think about all of these, the skills and the instruction at first, the best practices you have within your team about architecture, etc., all those findings and code review automated by AI, and also all those practices about the testing and mutation testing to be sure that your test coverage is not a false positive or it's not false, it's really a good test coverage. You can really start to gain confidence, and then, yeah, really improve your process and improve the quality of what has been generated by AI. So yeah, thank you a lot, Nnenna, for all of those presentation. If people you have some question, feel free to add them. Where can people find you, Nnenna? Is it easier from LinkedIn, from Twitter?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn and Twitter is where I'm at. I think folks can see Nana Hacks. That's the name that I go by pretty much everywhere that is not LinkedIn. Of course, I use my full name at LinkedIn, but I'm always talking about AI coding, always digging into different things related to AI systems that are pushing us toward just higher quality engineering and AI tools that we can trust. Really, that's the goal. That's the stuff I care about.
Yeah, same for me, for us at Packmind. So yeah, that's great to discuss with people like you, because yeah, we are mainly focusing on those code quality, context engineering, and how to really gain productivity with AI. And that's great also to see the new studies from Dora, from DX, uh, really relating the same conclusion about,
Yeah,
okay, we can generate code faster, but as a team, a company, we need to be aware of all the rules we have, all the policies we have, etc. So we can't do that like vibe coding with the whole team, etc. So that's really interesting that some new tools like Qodo, like Packmind, like a lot of different tools are coming to try to ensure that the generated code is still great in quality.
yeah.
So
It's like,
thank you again.
yeah. Thank you so much. This was amazing. And find me on X or LinkedIn, and I can share more resources as well. So thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you again, Nina. And we will have the replay. So if people can join right now, we will still have the replay on YouTube. So it would be great for people wanting to know more about Qodo. And I think that really a great tool to try. And it's pretty easy to, I think, try it and see the insight for some PR, and see how much time you can gain from the word team. So that's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Nina. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Ciao. Ciao, everyone.